Hello everyone, I'm Priyadarshini Mahara, faculty at the Department of Buddhist Studies, University of Delhi. Today I'm going to discuss with you module number 21, and this module is constituted in paper number 11 of Philosophy of Buddhism. This module is titled as Doctrine of Vigyapti Matrita and Alya Vinyan. So, till now we've seen that we've talked about Alya Vinyan and lot of other philosophical aspects. Now today our main concern would be specifically on Vigyapti Matrita as well as Alya Vinyan. Let us begin with Vigyapti Matrita. So when we talk about the doctrine of Vigyapti Matrita, we see that Yogachar idealism towards the Vigyapti Matrita states that it means only mind. It is the word which was used by Yogachar school to prove that only mind is the phenomenon which is real and it does exists. Vigyapti is a technical term of the Sarvastivadin Abhidharma, which Vasubandhu has here appropriated and used in a special sense. An investigation of this term can illustrate in miniature the widespread appropriation and redefinition of the Abhidharma in Vijnanavad philosophy. Etymologically, the term Vigyapti means the act of causing someone to know something distinctly or in a concrete sense, that which causes to know distinctly. So when we look at this particular term Vigyapti, we see that etymologically the term Vigyapti means the act of causing someone to know something distinctly or in a concrete sense, that which causes one to know distinctly. Another important term derived from the causative with the prefix pra is pragyapti, or in Pali it states panyati. It means declaration or manifestation in words, hence verbal or conventional designation, or perhaps even concept. As we have discussed about it in module number 18, an introduction to Buddhist idealism. Therefore, here we are discussing again the concept of Yogachar idealism in context to Vigyapti Matrita Siddhi. Vasubandhu's stress on ideation only is consistent with the standard doctrine of Buddhism through all its periods, that the person whose mind is stabilized or concentrated sees things as they really are. From the beginning, the theory was that an entity can be somehow visualized mentally in better, more real or truer form than in ordinary sense perception. When we talk about Vigyapti, here an emphasis is laid on the mind. The sense perception is not termed to be as purer or as clearer than the mind. To remove error and illusion, one has to do something about the foundations of mind, rehabilitate or transform it. In an ethical sense, the acts of speech and body are dependent upon the acts of mind. The latter are the real villain or saint. In yoga training, one should transfer the object to the mind, then eliminate all mental strain from the meditative object and avoid any alteration of the meditative object itself. When we talk about purifying the mind or bringing all the senses under control, we see that mind plays an important role here. In the yogic training or the training of controlling the senses, one should transfer the object to the mind, then eliminate all mental strain from the meditative object, and then avoid any alteration of the meditative object itself. So the process begins with perceiving the object and then sending it to the mind. Now, what does the mind do? Mind removes any sort of strain that is happening. So, mind brings all those objects under a controlled sense. When the meditative object is itself an alteration, it is removed. And you see that in the final stage of such meditation, the object ceases to be the object, since the subject-object relation has been transcended. So what is the main purpose of our understanding here? When we talk about mind only, we are saying that mind plays a crucial role in building up the object and subject relationship. That is done only for our understanding of the phenomenal existence. But at the end, this mind, subject and object relationship, mind and the object relationship totally vanishes. And that is the main aim of the mind. When we talk about yoga is just one way to meditate or to bring control over the senses. When we talk about various other meditative forms, we see that the object is taken to the mind removes all sorts of strain and then brings an object to a constant halt. Here, when the object is at a state which is stable, it further removes the object and the mind relationship. Therefore, any sort of relationship, subject or object relationship, is transcended. With the eye of pragya, which is no eye, the meditator sees the entity in form of void. He has carried it back to the realm where it abides in itself, devoid of all adventurous relations, and so it is not the object of a subject. The Madhyant Vibhang teaches that the imagination of unreality creates dependent origination, which is known as Pratitya Samutpad in Sanskrit and Paticca Samupad in Pali. And the unreal subject-object relation, and that liberation is achieved by elimination of the subject-object duality. So try to understand it in this way. When we're talking about imagination of unreality, it creates dependent origination and the unreal subject-object relation, and that liberation is achieved by elimination of subject-object duality. There is a point in your meditative state where the subject-object duality comes to an end, when the relationship ceases to exist. It is no wonder then that Vasubandhu should write his 2 classic treatises about ideation only. But he does not forget the viewpoint of the Madhyant Vibhag, on which he wrote the basic commentary. The Buddhist path is principally in terms of mental training and reorienting, but the goal of the Yogachar school was the condition of Dharma Dhatu, or voidness free from subject-object duality, the condition called Parinispan, or perfect. Then the imagination of unreality is in voidness, and voidness in it. So you see this relationship, when it comes to an end, it is more like the imagination of reality is in voidness and voidness is in imagination of reality. So the two inseparable reals come into existence. The distinctness of the two real is shown by such statements as whether or not a Tathagat arises, the void dharm dhatu abides, comparable to saying whether or not a potter abides. Immediately it follows that a Tathagat, foremost of all, and all other beings, selves, persons, pertain to category called imagination of unreality, and all grades of matter, subtle or coarse, pertain to void dharm dhatu. The inseparability of the two reals derive from the fact that the man has devised this system of thought, and man cannot conceive an act of thinking apart from a substantial vehicle for thought, cannot conceive of a form without a content. So, you cannot conceive or think apart from a substantial vehicle for thought. The same way you cannot conceive of a form without any content. So if I don't give you a content, how can you think on that particular topic? It is significant that the theory of three Buddha bodies arose in Yogacar school. When we talk about three Kai or three bodies of the Buddha, we see that it arose in Yogacar school. The one is called Dharm Kai, or the body of nature, is on the side of the void, absolute, the self-abiding Dharm Dhatu, realms of nature. The other two realms, which is Sambhog Kai and Nirman Kai, when we talk about Sambhog Kai, we are pointing out to body of bliss. And Nirman Kai is the body of transformation. These are on the side of imagination of unreality, in the sense respectively of Purush, which means person, and Maya, which means illusion creating power. Hence, Mahayana Buddhism teaches that the Sambhog Kai has 32 characteristics of a great person, and teaches that Nirman Kai has the special power of magical creation of different bodies, which are comparable to the illusory power that is Maya. And these two expressions are based on the same Sanskrit root, which is Ma. So the Yogacara school does have a subjective kind of idealistic philosophy, which is limited to formal cause. The mirrored forms of things are no more real than the forms seen in dream. They are all projections of mind foundations, mind or evolving mind, which is Alya Vinyan or Pravarti Vinyan, Chit or Chet. On the blank screen, voidness, that is the absolute in this system, pure substance of unlimited impressionability. So when we talk about the mind playing its function according to Yogacara Buddhism, it is the mind that constructs all the concepts. Everything that is present in the verbalization or that is present in our communication leads to the conceptual construction of the mind. The reality of voidness is Paramarth Sat, which literally means the actual fact of the supreme thing. The reality of imagination of unreality, just a careful understanding of this is required here. When I say the reality of voidness is Paramarth Sat, Now here what I'm talking about is reality of imagination of unreality. This is what is Samriti Satya, and it literally means the actual fact of covering process. Does the imagination of unreality covers pure dhatu with transient dharma, and this is known as Sanskrit dharma, which arise and pass away depending on certain characteristics. Now this is what is also termed as Paratantra Lakshan, as it covers itself with corruptions which are known as Klesh, having the imaginary characteristic, which is Parikalpit Lakshan. And when the pure Dharma Dhatu is free from those transient dharms evoked by the subject-object covering, it has the perfect characteristic. And this is termed according to Yogachar as Pari Nispan Lakshan. But before the Dharma Dhatu can become free of the dependency characteristic, the imagination of unreality must become free of the imaginary characteristic. Therefore, the prescription states first selflessness of personality and next selflessness of dharma. For that matter, when we look at in our everyday life, first is characteristic of selflessness and one's own selfless attitude, and then next is the selflessness of dharma. Reality in Buddhism is to be understood as not being or state, but as constructive process. The spiritual reality is not strictly speaking a fact or a deed, but in actuality it points out to doing. In the world of mind, nothing is already done. Nothing is because it is finished and complete. All points out to continuous doing. Now, when we talk about perception only, Vigyapti Matrata, and we see that there are lot of realistic critiques on this particular notion of Vigyapti Matrata or mind only doctrine. In the beginning of Vimshastik, Vasubandhu stated his philosophical position as follows. The three realms are Vigyapti Matrata, which means as a central point of controversy, the term Vigyapti Matrata not only was mistreated by Vasubandhu's contemporaries but also caused trouble for modern scholars. Now, how did they do that? We will be picking up certain critical aspects of this Vigyapti Matrata doctrine, and we will be discussing on these critical aspects. Various renditions of it have been provided, such as consciousness only, ideation only, representation only, or perception only. But none of them could be of much help without the whole argument being fully articulated. Meanwhile, we need to know only that the term Vigyapti literally means proclamation or making known, and that the term Matra means only. As a compound, Vigyapti Matra is the present context means being known or presented in the consciousness. The whole statement means that the entire universe, which consists of the realm of desire, the realm of form, and the realm of formless, are nothing but that which is known or presented within consciousness. Only is stressed in order to rule out any external referent or object. This idealist statement invited immediate objections from the realists. Now let's see what are these objections. The first one says, if perception occurs without referring to an external object, then there could be no determination of space and time. But then, why does the perception of a certain thing occur only at a specific time and place and not at any time and anywhere? If perception arises from the consciousness without referring to any external object, then one could perceive, for an instance, a table anywhere and any time. But in fact, consciousness is not thus arbitrary. Therefore, the existence of an external object is necessarily required for the occurrence of perception. Now, to this critical issue, Vasubandhu replied that in the case of a dream, a perception does occur at a specific time and place, though this does not correspond to any external object. For example, if I had a dream that in the morning I saw Mr. So-and-so on the corner of the street, in this case, time and space are determined even when Mr. So-and-so is non-existent. So this is the answer that Vasubandhu replied to his critics. The second realistic objection, or the second question that was raised by the realists, was if perception occurs without corresponding to an external object, why is it that many persons present at a specific time and space are available to have the same perception of something? Now, if we put it in other words, we say that if the perception depends on the consciousness only and not on the external object at all, then that specific perception could not be manifest to all observers who are at present at the same time and place. But this is not the case, for all drivers can see the red light when they stop in front of the traffic light. If this is true, then there must exist a real red light corresponding to driver's perception. To this, Vasubandhu says that the common perceptions can occur without referring to an external object. Why and how can these common perceptions refer to an external object without actually referring? Because observers share the same structure of consciousness. Vasubandhu gave here an example of hell and hungry ghosts, which was popular and suitable for his contemporaries, saying that all hungry ghosts living in hell see the perceiver and the hell guardians that in fact are non-existent, since they fall into hell because of the maturation or vipak of the same deeds or karma. According to Buddhist tradition, the world of life and death is constituted by the experiences of those who share the same kind of karma in the past. Thus, the structure of individual consciousness is supported by common past. The Yogachar coined a technical term called Vipak Vinyan, which means maturation consciousness, to designate this underlying structure of consciousness which results from maturation of past deeds. So this was the reply that Vasubandhu gave to his objections. Now coming to the third objection, which was raised by the realist, it says the most striking criticism from realists is the problem of efficacy. If perception in the waking state is the same as that in a dream state, so all perceptions do not correspond to external objects, then why does the thing perceived in the waking state have efficacy, whereas in a dream state does not? Let us, for instance, take the example of the poison and knife in a dream do not possess the function of killing, while in the waking state they do. So when we talk about a knife and poison that we see in dream, they do not kill a person, but the same two kill a person in the present wake state. In response to this criticism, Vasubandhu did not deny the efficacy of things and actions, but argued that efficacy is exactly prompted by perception only, without necessarily relying on any external object as its cause. So, this is what Vasubandhu talks about when he says or replies to his critique. Up to this point, he defended his position quite satisfactorily by arguing that the three pillars of realism, that is, determination of time and space, indetermination of observer, and efficacy, cannot prove the existence of external objects because they occur also in situations in which no external objects exist. Vasubandhu admitted the above three conditions of experience. However, he did not accept the realist theory but argued that what is experienced or perceived is perception only, and this is Vigyapti Matrata. That Vasubandhu successfully presented counter arguments to the realist criticism is not equivalent, however, to saying that his own position is demonstrated. The problem remains. Both in waking and in dream, we do have perception of something. How is it possible that something does not exist independently of consciousness? Or how is it possible that something exists as manifested by and to consciousness above? The clue to an answer to this question is found in Vasubandhu's doctrine of consciousness. So we can refer to that doctrine if we want to further investigate into his concept of Vigyapti Matrata. Coming to the doctrine of Alya Vinyan, as we have already discussed about the different types of consciousness in our module number 18. So therefore here it is going to be a repetition of Alya Vinyan in order to understand the concept. In the text of Vigyapti Matrata, there is a mention about Alya Vinyan. The evolution of Vinyan is infinite, and yet these are the three stages of its evolution. First is Alya Vinyan, storehouse consciousness. The first and the foremost important fundamental of the three is the Alya Vinyan. It is the first phase in process of differentiation of pure consciousness. It is defined by name Alya because it is a place or spectrum in which are contained the seeds or impressions of any kind of action whatsoever, good, bad, or indifferent. All the dharma are being ensured and of its effect or evolution. Therefore, it is also called Sarva Bijak, as being the cause of every empirical existence. It is vipak of any kind of karma done by the individual in any sphere of existence. It leaves traces in Alya. Basically, this Alya serves fewer than two processes. It is spectrum of the impression of past, which is Vinyan, while the other on its turn give rise to the further consciousness by maturing rest of the other consciousness. This whole order is based on cyclic way. This cosmic evolution has therefore two aspects. The first is the replenishment of vasanas in the Alya, and the second is the division of these into further consciousness. which again lay their own seeds in the Alya and so on. It has seen before that Vijnan is essentially creative. The Alya, however, must have a content project by self. Therefore, Alya must have content, that is to say that content cannot be empirical one, since it is itself nothing but empirical. Its objectivity is not differentiated into specific forms. Hence, Alya functions in two ways. One is internally, that is consciousness appearing as the constituents of an individual, and second is externally, and that is as the consciousness of undifferentiated objectivity. Therefore, it can be said that Alya stands for the transcendental level. From observation, it is understood that the root of all projection is their respective of impression, that is vasana of an individual ego, and that of the objective element of its existence. And this is the whole idea of what Alya Vijnan is. So also subjectively of that confront the Alya, that is known. To know a thing is to make it definite, to fix its place in order of things, the differentiating it from all rest of the objective. The Alya situation is inherently unstable, and Alya is so that it is unstable, it can never be exhausted till the idea of objectivity itself is eradicated. The storehouse of consciousness just lay down mark of process of determination, and itself it is indeterminate. The Alya concept, somehow similar to Prakriti in the Sankhya system, here both the system accept similarity doctrine of evolution on standpoint from realistic view. Another important issue, and therefore it shows that it is primordial subject. In Alya, our mental dispositions change every moment. If there is no Alya, the enthusiasm of achievement or achieving the freedom becomes meaningless. And so Alya Vijnan is equally important as all other consciousness. In fact, there are times when Alya Vijnan plays the most essential role in a being. Thank you.